Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's APT and Cybersecurity Group LinkedIn Live event. I'm Aaron Stillwell, your moderator, and I'm thrilled to be here with you for an important conversation at the intersection of two of the most important topics of today, AI and cybersecurity. Joining me is someone who truly needs no introduction to the cybersecurity world, Debbie Wheeler, CISO at Delta Airlines. Debbie brings deep experience and sharp insight from one of the most critical and complex industries when it comes to protecting data, infrastructure, and people. I'm also excited to be joined by my co-hosts, Alex Mavro, former CISO at BNP Paribas, and Bonnie Stith, former Director of Cyber Operations at the CIA. Together, we will explore whether AI is a double-edged sword people fear or the ultimate shield we need. This is a live and interactive discussion, so please add your questions in the LinkedIn comments as we go. I will be moderating these questions and will try and answer as many as possible. To view our past and future events, you can access our YouTube channel at APT Cybersecurity or our website, www.aptcybersecurity.ai. Debbie, nation-state adversaries are increasingly using AI to probe and exploit critical infrastructure. How concerned are you about AI being weaponized against the aviation sector?
I think it's a great question. And I think every technology preceding artificial intelligence and every technology that gets introduced in a post-AI world is going to have benefits and detriments. And I don't think our sector is alone in seeing weaponization of AI. And I worry about, honestly, all of the critical infrastructure sectors continuing to be able to progress forward defensively in a world of artificial intelligence. I think for us, a key is preparing our teams and preparing our end users to use artificial intelligence in a positive way and educating them on how to do that while educating them on the ways that we see AI being used negatively or against the industry. But I think it's going to be a long journey, and we're only at the beginning of it with regard to the use of artificial intelligence. And so far, we're not seeing any silver bullets. So.
Yeah. And that's a great question. I think, when you start thinking about, the nation state adversaries, I think that's a big topic, but I'm a little bit also kind of concerned about criminal activities and using AI, because obviously where there's money, there's people interested in getting in. So what are you seeing on the criminal aspects of it with respect to coming after your systems there?
Well, I think it's probably going to be very similar to what we see today with criminals coming after our systems, right? They're going to use it. We see them using it for better phishing campaigns. We see them using it for, deepfake capability. We see them using it for social engineering. It's just giving them a better tool to do those types of activities with. And I think it's just going to be something that continues to evolve in terms of their use.
Yeah, that's a great. So, when you think about how you're working with, outside of the cybersecurity workforce, where, there is a huge focus on, on all of this in those of us that are protecting the systems. But, beyond that perimeter, how are you working with the whole of the Delta team to educate them better on what they should be watching for?
No, that's great. So we work very closely with our education group. We work very closely with our legal team, our privacy team, our enterprise risk team, and our corporate security groups to deliver messaging to our employee base that's consistent with Delta's message about safety first always, right? So we don't talk about cybersecurity in terms of security. We talk about it in terms of cyber safety. This safety messaging resonates with our employees because they're living safety every single day. That's being emphasized in their jobs. Many of them have very dangerous jobs on the ramp. And so when we talk about cyber safety, it's something that they're already able to comprehend and relate to because they're hearing safety in other aspects of their daily activities.
I think that's a great way to put it. Safety first, always. And cybersecurity becomes part of that safety message. That feels very holistic in that space. So Alex, I'll ask you, do you have any questions you want to ask?
Yeah, I will go on the strategy more to understand. In your view, Deb, is AI currently more of a threat or a shield in cybersecurity? Or is that the wrong understanding for some other people, for example?
I think it's early days, right?
Mhm.
I think AI is evolving very fast.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have a full comprehension yet of what its capabilities are, let alone what the negative impacts of it are. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of media coverage of how it's going to replace every job on the planet and people are going to become, subservient to AI. But then you hear more moderate voices saying, look, at best, it's going to be a big help. Yes, it may replace some highly redundant roles, but it's not going to replace everything. And it will force us to upskill. And that there's great opportunity for us to use it as a force multiplier for the good things that our teams are doing and protecting our organizations. So again, early in the journey, everybody, and we'll wait to see how this shakes out.
Do you think we will need more time for this AI to become more mature, like 5-7 years?
I do think we're going to need more time for AI to become mature.
Mhm.
And I think, part of that maturing is going to be observing how threat actors are using it, right?
Yeah.
Because that tends to be what forces us to react either from a regulatory perspective,
Correct.
that
Yeah.
forces the industry to react from a product perspective, a security perspective, and it forces us as individuals to react in terms of our usage, moderating our usage or moving forward with our usage. So I do think that we need to get a little further into it. And I do think it's going to be a few years before we have a better idea of just how this is going to mature and what behavioral changes it's going to force, what technological changes and regulatory changes it's going to force.
And how do you see the role of the CISO evolving as AI becomes more embedded in both threats and defenses?
Well, I think just like the role of the CISO in terms of other capability and technology, right? You've
Mhm.
got to listen and understand how your business partners want to use these capabilities
Yeah.
and then help to educate them on the ways in which the capabilities can present risk to the organization, risk to what they're doing.
Yeah.
And when and if there are capabilities available, security solutions available, working with them to get those implemented. And when there aren't solutions available, trying to temper their desire to use them right now by being very frank and transparent about what you can do to protect and what you can't do to protect.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So I do have a question from from one of our attendees. I'm going to post this up here real quick so we can see it. SK says, with AI evolving so fast, how can someone new to cybersecurity keep up with how attackers are using it for things like phishing and social engineering?
So what I tell my team is, we have to be lifelong learners in the cyberspace. And you've got to set aside time every single day. And I practice this, so I know how hard it is to do. But if that means coming into work an hour early or staying an hour later, there's all kinds of articles online about testing that's being done on different AI models, the agentic agents, right? There's just such a plethora of information that's being published out there, studies that are being published. Read as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Talk with experts in the industry, have discussions
Correct.
with people at AWS or at Microsoft if you're going the route of Copilot. But there's a lot that's being put out into, the internet right now, into the cybersphere. So you've just really got to make the time to get on top of your reading and education.
Let's cover one more question we just had coming in by Carlos. It goes, what is your capability wishes for AI as tool you can use within your cybersecurity program?
Wow, I have a whole laundry list. So, I think initially what I'd really like to do is see if there is a play for AI to replace my SIM solution and really be able to come loaded with the use cases in an easy manner so that we're just querying, we're just asking it to go find things, and it's able to go out and it's able to look and respond. That's what I would like. I would love for it to be able to know my environment so well and be able to ingest all of the sources that we put into our SIM and analyze that information to offer back to us things that we should go and take a look at. So that's kind of my number one thing, is trying to enable my SOC with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I think the other area that I would love to see maturity with AI is, protecting all of our identity.
Will be soon. From what I see, will be soon.
Well, let's hope, right? I hear lots of promises about capabilities.
Yeah,
and
I know.
So far, some of them have really fallen flat. But like I said, it's early days, so we'll see how things mature over the next 18 months to 2 years. But I think offering better protection for identity is going to be another area that we look heavily at in terms of leveraging artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I was going to say, you see a lot of posts on LinkedIn about people concerned about their jobs in AI. That seems to be coming around. Do you see that as to be a concern with AI, investing in these tools? Are security engineers at risk of their jobs, do you think?
I don't think we're going to be getting rid of security engineers anytime soon. And I'll use maybe some dated analogies, but I distinctly remember back in the 80s and 90s when we were saying, as a society, we were going to go paperless in the next 10, 20 years. Checks were going to become obsolete. I just had a vendor last week in California, one of the more progressive states in terms of their use of technology, tell me that they only accepted payment in form of a check. So we haven't become paperless. Checks are still being purchased and used. I think it's going to be quite some time before security analysts have to worry about their job. I do think it's incumbent upon them to leverage artificial intelligence in the execution of their job, understand how they can do that as a force multiplier.
Yes.
Yeah. So, with respect to that, I'm curious, when you think about, the training that your team does along the way, in addition to reading and other things, what kind of certificates are you looking for in your workforce? If you can go that far down in the weeds.
Obviously the CISSP still carries weight, but I have a lot of highly talented engineers who do not have that certification. We have engineers that have, I've got one engineer that's got over 20 some certifications. Whoa. I don't know that I value his capabilities any more than I value one of my engineers with 0 certifications. I do think that at least the point in time that I entered the security sphere some 30 plus years ago, and many of the folks around me entered it, there was less of a focus on formal education and certification. That's evolved over the last couple of decades, but I certainly don't see that it is an indicator of how great or how bad an engineer you are. I've seen a number of exceptionally strong engineers with very unconventional backgrounds and no certifications in the security space.
Deb, I might have a question according to what Bonnie mentioned earlier. Are you looking for people or employees or colleagues that they have more practice than certification? For example, people with practice, like 20 years, 15 years in the field, might help you.
It's hard to find people with 20 years or 15 years and have artificial intelligence capabilities.
For sure. Not on the AI. I was not speaking about the AI. I was speaking in general about cybersecurity or information security.
I'm a believer in giving our young people better opportunities. So when we have entry-level positions open, the first thing we're looking for is passion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we ask a lot of questions around, how do you learn? What do you like to do in your free time? Do you like to solve puzzles, right? There are things that
like what your hobby is.
Yeah, what are your hobbies, right? and how tenacious are you with those hobbies? Because I want people that have a passion for the field and aren't watching the clock, coming in as close to 8 o'clock as they can and leaving as close to 5 o'clock as they can. We need people that have a passion for the field
Yeah.
and that aren't going to treat it as a job, because it's not a job. To do it well, it can't just be a job.
Oh, yeah.
So that's probably the biggest area we over-index on in terms of what we're looking for in talent. And that goes for talent coming out of school all the way up to those folks that are, 15, 20-year veterans in the industry. But it's a passion for what they're doing, and the ability to continuously learn.
That's a good question, Bonnie. I was going to ask you. It's probably similar within the CIA of who you're looking for. Someone who's passionate about protecting the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things I've noticed over the last couple of years, and I'll ask you this, Debbie, is more of a de-emphasis on college, formal college degrees, and or less on that and more on the, what do you know about this? And well, I mean, I've met high school kids who work on the weekends doing pen testing for companies. So, what's your real passion in this space as opposed to your formal education? I mean, is that still a criteria in Delta that you got a formal degree? Or
No. So coming out of the pandemic, we removed the need for formal degrees from a lot of our job qualifications. And we've had mixed success, to be honest with you. We've had some mixed success in the IT world with people that came into the company following the pandemic that didn't have degrees but had tremendous interest in cyber or tremendous interest in technology in general, and how successful they were. And several of them self-selected out because the field was not what they thought it was. And one of those was, a relatively young individual who was very excited to be getting into security and got here, and it was just too much stress, right? Too much stress. So I don't, maybe you could say having to go through 4 years of college teaches you how to handle stress. I'm sure there are people out there that would say, no, it didn't teach me as much as I needed to know. But we've had mixed results. And so what we're tending to look at as we move forward with jobs is we are tending to look at least 2 years of college experience or at least 2 years of formal education in technology, just to get that basic background in networks and in servers and in cloud, right? We have a high school here in the Atlanta area that has a work study program. And so we have kids from freshman through senior year that spend 1 day a week on site working alongside my engineers. And we tell them, learn as much as you can on your own time about cloud. Go create an account in AWS, play around with coding, do all of these things. There's so many resources out there, because what you're going to need to learn and be able to do on the job, you're not going to get strictly through college. So, college is a great foundation, kind of a framework, but you're going to have to hang other things on that framework that you do on your own to learn and to grow. And there's a tremendous number of resources out there for you to do that with.
Yeah, I think that's great. I go back to your, the cyber, that safety first always piece. I mean, the reality of the stress that you guys live with every day is there really are lives on the line.
I'm sorry.
If something goes wrong, I mean, you've got souls that, that could be, impacted fatally. So I think there's a certain amount of, I want to be in this cybersecurity job, and then you relate it to, and there's real people counting on you. And that could be one of those things that people just want to opt out of. I mean, I don't want to be responsible for lives. So that's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And it's not something we take lightly at all. And we test everything, absolutely everything. There isn't a piece of technology that goes into production inside of Delta that doesn't go through rigorous testing. And sometimes it's months of testing before it gets moved into production, because we recognize that every change we make to the technology footprint here has the potential of impacting our operations radically. And we want to minimize that impact as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. So, I'm curious, trade secrets aside and everything, how much do you interface with your fellow CISOs in the other airlines?
A lot.
With respect to security?
A lot. We do not consider security a competitive advantage. So, I came out of the financial services sector in the FSISAC was just a great example of how CISOs come together and share and exchange information. We have that same relationship through the Aviation ISAC, obviously, but we also have our industry lobbying group, Airlines for America, which has a cyber council many of us sit on, and we see each other once a quarter. And we're constantly talking about and trying to improve the quality of security across the aviation sector, not just within the airlines, but encouraging the same with our respective airport counterparts. But it's been a very, very collaborative industry in terms of cybersecurity, and I consider my peers at the other airlines friends.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think one of the things that really wasn't predicted back in the day was the rise of the antivirus community, as sharing across the way they did. And so I mean, and what a force multiplier that was in so many respects, just to your home computer. But but I love that you guys are working together. When you talk about AI in this group, what do you think are the biggest concerns that surface among your peers in the aviation industry with respect to AI?
Well, I think we're all still trying to understand how it's going to change the face of aviation. And we're still kind of working through within our own business units whether the activities they want to engage in are truly best served by using artificial intelligence or maybe machine learning, right? I think there's still some struggle to understand the difference between the two. And I think we kind of share that in common. I think from a security perspective, we're all hearing lots of promises from our respective security vendors about how they're incorporating artificial intelligence into our security solutions. And I think we're cautiously optimistic that we'll see that happen. But at the same time, so far, it's we're just not seeing anything dramatically shifting.
Yeah,
That's a question I was going to ask. You're seeing a lot of marketing for AI?
A lot of
A
marketing.
lot of these two solutions, and
A lot of
there
marketing.
was a big conversation in RSA about that.
Yeah.
And is it really AI at that point integrated, or is it just they're using the marketing terms for it? And obviously it's hard for security practitioners to say, oh yeah, this product definitely has AI, or is it just a marketing term?
Yeah. I think we're, like I said earlier, I think it's going to be another couple of years before we really see artificial intelligence making a mark in the security space. I think there's a lot of initial forays into that through both security vendors enabling existing tools that we're leveraging, as well as by vendors enabling security for AI tools. But I'm not seeing anything that I would look at and say, yes, that is truly an example of artificial intelligence.
Is what I was mentioning, Aaron. We need maturity.
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, it's the predictive versus the reactive, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
in the perfect world, you're predicting what the next thing is going to be so that you can be in front of it. I think, in so much of security, you're only as good as the last thing you repelled. And
That's
so
true.
that's so reactive.
Right.
I'm curious, how do you educate the board on, on the challenges or the opportunities in this AI space for security?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because, when you talk about my peers in the aviation industry, we spend a good deal of time comparing notes about our boards, and no two boards ask the same questions or have the same concerns. I think our board of directors has been very interested in how we're looking at artificial intelligence as an IT organization and what business uses our business partners have brought forth for using AI within the airline. But at the same time, they've been very clear they want us to move cautiously. So it's given us the breathing space to really investigate and analyze what's out there, how it fits with the use cases our business partners are bringing forward, and whether it's the right time to make those investments or we need to wait until more mature solutions are available. But we are moving some things internally forward, and we're obviously looking heavily at a lot of security solutions for artificial intelligence. And we looked at one last year, and it's already been surpassed by 3 other entrants to the field just since March of this year. So again, to the point Alex made earlier, maturity. And it's just going to be a lot of turbulence until we get there.
Yeah.
You know what's there. In fact, is not AI. AI, as you were mentioning, is marketing for the moment. In fact, it is machine learning, because this AI is learning based on what we are searching, what we are looking for, what we are doing, and so on. That's my opinion over here. Maybe the others have different opinions, but this is how I see this AI for the moment. And based to what I have reading on the internet about different companies that are doing research into this.
No, I think you're right, Alex. I think, when ChatGPT was announced, what's it been, almost 2 years ago now?
Yeah, remember?
The big fanfare around it was that it had been trained, like many other models, on the content of the internet.
Yes.
And I kind of find that humorous, because what if we told people for the last 2 decades about the internet and what you can trust and what you can't, right? We've said, take everything on the internet with a grain of salt. And oh, by the way, we're going to train all of our large language models on content from the internet. But it's
Correct.
totally trustworthy, and it's never going to hallucinate.
That's right.
So I think it gets, again, back to what you said earlier, which is we've got a ways to go, and these models have a ways to mature. And I think what we're starting to see, and I'm sure others are as well, are models designed for very specific content and very specific use cases. And I think those will probably mature more rapidly. We've determined we're not going to use publicly available models. So everything that we're experimenting with, we're using inside of a tenant that is specific to us. And that gives us, obviously security from a guardrails perspective, but also assurances that we're training the model on our data, our content, our corpus of information. And so the questions and the queries against it are going to be responses that have already been validated, because we've validated the inputs. I think that's probably the bigger concern with using, publicly available models, is how do you validate the inputs?
It's funny you mentioned that. I have 2 of my children are in college, and the professors are warning both of them that if you're going to be utilizing ChatGPT or Grok or anything else, you need to validate the information that they're going to provide, because it may not be factual at that point, right? Because it's just scanning the internet, it's bringing that information up, and it's doing its best it possibly can. But a lot of people, they run it through AI and they think that's the answer and that's the truth. And then they get back and they find out, you know what, you didn't do your homework. That's not it.
Right. Well, I kind of remember back in college, we had to have multiple sources for every quote we did in papers that we prepared, right? And I think today our kids are a little lazy. They just want one source and the internet.
Yeah, they just want speed.
Right. Well, ChatGPT said this, so
yeah.
But it's not only like that.
I hear my son in the background smirking, but that's okay.
Aaron, even when I'm looking on for example, for a framework or even a standard, and I'm trying to do web scraping, because this is what the AI is doing from my point of view. I'm looking and asking the AI, could you please provide me the link? And also, I would like to understand where is the article and paragraph, or even anything else in that link, in order to have, let's say, the proof that what the information provided, it's correct, because I don't trust it. I mean, Aaron knows I don't trust the AI at the moment. That's my opinion.
And
again.
I think that goes back to, this idea of like, well, it was all a lie before, but this time it's really the truth. I think, just being mindful of the fact that that there are a lot of people out there that are going to trust everything they see. And I'm curious, Debbie, I heard you say we've got, we're not using publicly available, models, and we're using our own corpus of info. How are you guys going to be able to mine that there isn't that slippage over? Because not all of your employees are going to do that. They're going to go look at it someplace else, and then somehow or other it will integrate into your data. I mean, you know how this works. So
Yeah. So we started off the journey 2 years ago by blocking all access to the publicly available models from within the network, and by
okay.
issuing policy to our employees, telling them what was acceptable to do and what was not. And we're not
So
allowing
you
them.
created boundaries, right?
We created boundaries up front, and we were very clear about why we were creating those boundaries.
Mhm.
But we, at the same time, were encouraging them, if they were curious about the technology, to definitely go and play with it on a personally owned device at home. Just don't use your work credentials to set up accounts and do that.
Okay.
Does everybody listen? I'm sure we have some policy violators out there, but we do try to give guidance. We do give direction. We do repeat messaging. We put learning modules together. We put those out there for people. We make it mandatory training. So we feel like we're doing everything we can to communicate with our people the proper use of technology inside of Delta as well as outside of Delta. And we're always available for questions. So, can you guarantee that 100,000 out of 100,000, 200,000 people, there isn't going to be one or two people that just refuse to listen? I can't guarantee that.
Yeah.
Well, or just in a hurry. I mean,
Or
that's,
in a hurry.
sometimes,
Right. Right.
it's when I'm in a hurry, a port in any storm kind of thing.
Right.
So, I know I'm not supposed to, but this time it'll be okay.
Right.
And it's that one time. That's all.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay. I love that you guys are doing the inside and outside responsibility training, because I think some of that will spill over to home life, which is
Yeah,
think,
that
really
is our
important.
whole approach. If we can teach our people how to be safe and secure at home, they'll bring those behaviors to work. But if
Yeah.
you're preaching at them about, what it takes to be secure at work, it's going to go in one ear and out the other, because you really need to connect with them at a more personal level. And there's nothing more personal than telling them how to protect their kids online, how to protect their financial documentation online, right? When you're making it really impactful to them as a person, they will adopt the behaviors more readily, and they'll get into that habit, and they'll bring it to work. And that's what we're striving for in all of our awareness and education programs.
Do you think
No,
because
sorry, Alex. Go ahead.
no,
I didn't mean
please
to-
go on, Aaron. No, please go
I
on.
was, I was going to say, the obviously after COVID, the work from home policies and that merge of personal life and work life became one. That's got to be difficult at that point with training. At that point,
It is, but I can only control what I can control.
Yeah.
Right. My team can only control what we can see and what we have the direct ability to influence. And then it's up to our people to do the right thing. So, yeah, it's, we put all the protections in place, multi-factor, there's a variety of things that are in place to protect them and their use of our network resources, and then the training. But it sure isn't, the silver bullet for getting people to behave correctly all the time.
Yeah, of course. Alex, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Do you think it is good to use AI because we were speaking about education, security awareness, for example. It's one of the key point for inside and outside that you mentioned earlier.
So we haven't looked at using AI for security awareness. We have a really, really creative team internally that's done a phenomenal job with awareness activities. I think as we look, as this area becomes more mature, and again, going back to what I said earlier about being a force multiplier, if we find tooling that can help us, multiply our efforts and reach all of our employees in new and engaging ways, we'll definitely be open to using that.
I was asking why because I have seen, I think a month ago, a platform which is dedicated 100% with AI. It's not a bad platform. I mean, I compare with other vendor, of course, but it has a lot of things. Gamification, based on the gamification, you can take the behavior of the employee and you can understand if he have a predictability of, I don't know, 80-90% that he might go into a phishing action, for example.
Yeah.
Or if you can see, for example, another colleague from financial, which he might think, the AI, he might think that he will click on that link because he saw the information. I mean, the email was from the CEO and so on. The platform is not bad how it's constructed, but still needs some things to be done. And I mean, again, maturity, as we were
Right.
speaking earlier.
Right. And you got to do something with that data, right? It's not enough to know that, hey, Bob Smith sitting over in finance is highly susceptible to clicking a link in a phishing campaign.
Yeah.
Right. Or, Sally Black sitting over here is 98% likely to do X, Y, and Z. You got to do something with that information. Otherwise, you're found to be negligent from a regulatory perspective.
What is also good on this platform, this is why I was speaking about it. You can, I mean, the platform is sending automatically the information to the HR, and HR is coming back to the employee and say, look, what we found, and based on this, we would like for you to follow these courses and so on. I mean, it's not a bad platform in that case, because the other vendors I haven't seen to be more responsive, let's say.
So we've seen similar capability in some of our existing tooling in terms of the susceptibility of individuals to respond to phishing emails or to click links. We've got metrics on who the most targeted people in our organization are, and we do targeted training. But
Good.
I think in an age where you've got so many people saying, we can't find good security talent, budgets are being cut, we can't hire enough people, trying to do individualized training like that or follow up with each individual is going to become unsustainable. It just doesn't scale. And so we're not looking at solutions that can't scale. We're looking at enablement that allows us to drive broad messaging.
And I would just say that, coming from a business where we were always trying to figure out predictability in humans, the one thing that is predictable is they are unpredictable.
Right.
So and I like that scale piece because you can really only you got 150 to 200,000 people, and then add vendors onto that.
Yeah.
The 1-for-1 training would be particularly difficult.
Yeah.
Which is why policies, and regulations tend to have a little bit of a punitive backside to them. If you don't follow it, then we will identify you, and you'll be treated individually. But I would be, and this maybe speaks to me, is the idea of trying to predict people and going out and beforehand somehow or other, some punitive action. It gets a little police state-ish. So there you go.
Yeah. So we don't buy into the police action, right?
Yeah.
We want to make it fun. If you make it fun for people to learn, they'll remember it. And we want people to remember it. So every October we do a phishing derby. And in the lead up to the derby, there's all kinds of activities that we engage in to get people's interest drummed up. We make a big deal out of the derby. They get a phishing license, they get a phishing kit. We actually this year gave away a very, very popular rubber ducky that is a Delta pilot. We had people lined up for 3 hours to get a phishing kit just so they could say they got the ducky. We are trying to engage people in a fun and meaningful way, and not in if you make it punitive, then people associate that with security or safety, and we're not trying to get them to associate us with something that's punitive. We're trying to get them to associate us with something that's, hey, serious topic, can be fun, but serious topic, right? And here I feel enabled and I feel equipped to do something with the information that I've been given. So, we did that. We did a cyber hunt. We had flight attendants cracking passwords. We're trying to get out there and really show people that this can be fun and engaging, but serious at the same time. And along the way, they're learning lessons to help them detect and be better at securing their own information and their own use of technology. So, if there are platforms out there that, can enhance that or be a force multiplier for what we're trying to do in terms of engaging our people and making this a fun topic as well as a serious topic, we'll look at it. But if it's a punitive platform, it's not going to find a home here.
Alex, it's funny because we interviewed George Finney. He wrote the books on zero trust.
Yeah.
Does zero trust seem to you almost very punitive at that point, where you're trusting nobody?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the end of your question.
No, I was saying
Aaron.
that we interviewed George about zero trust, but does zero trust seem like it's more punitive, where you're trusting nobody at that point?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in the business of risk management. You have to allow some level of risk for your business to operate. And yes, things will go wrong, and it's how you respond when they do. And we're practicing that. We're planning for that too. It's not just about all of the proactive steps we take or the defensive measures that we take and the tooling that we implement. It's also planning for those unexpected or less than pleasant outcomes of having to deal with 200,000 people that, this isn't their primary job. They're out there making the airline safe. They're out there focusing on customer experience. They're out there making sure that, that plane pushes back on time and delivers our customers on time to where they're going. And this is a secondary request to all of that. It doesn't mean they don't take it seriously. They do, but it's not their primary job. It's our primary job in IT.
Yeah. Well, I think, what I'm walking away with on this is it's enlisting versus subscripting. But I think if there's any CISOs listening, that phishing derby, that is a best practice, because it actually makes them want to participate in it versus feeling like they have to participate.
Yeah.
And so I just, that really kind of caught my eye, and that's a real best practice. So I congratulate you on that, Debbie.
Yeah, thank you. We're very proud of the derby as well as the cyber quest. So
yeah, absolutely.
Got some very creative people.
So
clearly you do.
Debbie Wheeler on.
Yeah, I know. And I love that. I've got some very creative people, and I'm letting them create. So, thank you for that too.
You have to.
Yeah,
I think as a leader, the best leaders stand back and let their people do what they do best. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah, empower your employees.
Empower the people. There's a question on here about frameworks, and I did want to hit this one because yes, NIST has the AI risk management framework for artificial intelligence, but there was an effort, and I don't want this to become a political discussion, so I'm going to stick to facts. There was an effort by Department of Homeland Security under Secretary Mayorkas last year to create a roles and responsibility framework for the secure use of artificial intelligence in critical infrastructure. And that group had participation from all of the large language model developers, all of the big tech companies, as well as state government officials and CEOs of critical infrastructure. I was fortunate that my CEO was invited to be a participant, and that meant I got to work on the working group. But it was a year-long effort to really articulate and define the roles and responsibilities for responsible use of AI in critical infrastructure. That document is published on the DHS website, and I think it's a good read. Specific to my industry, the FAA published a framework for the use of artificial intelligence in aviation. Again, as a supplement to what DHS authored, it has some great guidance, if you will, on responsible use of artificial intelligence specific to the aviation industry. But I think it answers a lot of people's questions around, well, how do you see aviation leveraging artificial intelligence? Well, we have guidance from the FAA on how to do that in a safe way, and how the makers of these large language models, what they should be thinking about and how they should be implementing security in their products. So there is some good documentation out there. What I'm not seeing right now is good regulation. I know that last week, the current administration released some guidance or regulation on artificial intelligence. I've not read the document. I think that they intend for more to come. But I do think that we have a lot of lessons we've learned in the past from technology advances that outpace security, to know that we need to get some form of regulation around this before it becomes so unwieldy that we can't put any aspect of that genie back in the bottle. And this is one that I think we definitely need to have our arms around beforehand.
If we speak about security frameworks, are current security frameworks sufficient to manage AI risk, or do we need AI-specific models for this? I'm
You know,
not
I
talking
love
about
that
Delta,
question.
I'm talking about in general.
Yeah, no, I love that question, and here's why. I've been in security for a long time, and I've seen a lot of technology change over the decades. And yet we always come back to telling people, if you could just do the basics well,
Yeah,
or as a colleague of mine says, do the basics brilliantly, it would mitigate a lot of the risk we see today impacting infrastructure. Patching, just patch. Set strong passwords, right? Just set. Nobody likes passwords, but get creative. Use your brain. Come up with something that's 16 characters long, and use it as a challenge, right?
yeah.
Use multi-factor authentication. We're not talking about tremendously, I don't know, fancy capabilities here. We're talking about basic cyber hygiene. And it's been a consistent message for over 30 years. I think there's a lot in the basic hygiene that applies to how we approach artificial intelligence. The tooling might change, right? Frameworks might change. Roles and responsibilities are definitely going to need to be fleshed out here.
Yeah.
But I think you're still going to find, build good configuration and guardrails around the tech, monitor the heck out of it, make sure it's performing as intended, protect it the way we protect other security tooling. And keep it patched, right? I'm sure it's going to require patching.
But
So,
what I don't know. Let's say you have IoT, industrial Internet of Things, over there, because you are working with industrial. I mean, for airplanes, to me, it's industrial. How do you patch those? Because those can't be patched until you reach some time. I mean, you need 5, maybe 7 years to patch for those. You can't patch whenever you want.
No, we can't, but we don't. The airframe manufacturers do the patching.
Okay.
So yes, planes are what we call E-enabled, and yes, they do get patched. We have software uploaded
whenever you want, or it's a specific
when
time.
Boeing and Airbus give us the patches to apply after the FAA has reviewed those patches and has certified those. We apply those to relevant aircraft. Not all of our aircraft are what we call E-enabled aircraft.
I'm asking because on the railways, for example, you can't patch until 5 to 7 years. And if you have nuclear, for example, or a nuclear plant, you even more. You need 7 to 10 years.
Yeah. So I think, each aspect of critical infrastructure is going to differ. And each area of critical infrastructure is going to have different governance and different regulatory bodies.
Yeah.
And so our regulatory bodies include the FAA, TSA, and in our case, Department of Defense. So, making sure that we are fully compliant with all of their regulations is part of the job that I have, as well as our legal team, our compliance team, our enterprise risk team, and our internal audit teams. But we are dependent on different entities to provide us with those patches and certifying that those are safe to apply.
Okay.
I think that's a really good distinction too, is that just differing between the critical infrastructure and the technology that's out there. And where you go for some of those patches. But yeah, absolutely. The basics are still the basics. And so, because the opposite to focus on the basics is throw in the towel and just say it's too hard.
That's right.
And I mean, that too hard thing can be really, really problematic. So,
Right.
so if you can focus on the basics, you can at least eliminate a big piece of the threat. I mean, my goal has always been, be tougher than the guy next to you, kind of thing, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
so if you can partner with your other industry partners to make sure that you're, covering as much as you can, you're accepting risk. But when you talked about risk, you said no risk is not possible, and I think that's really something to emphasize. I always said risk is between 1 and n. It's not 0.
Right.
And so, so as a security manager, what's acceptable risk? And then educating on what the risk is,
Right.
and
Right.
helping other people help determine what is the acceptable risk in this space, as opposed to it's too expensive. Well, if it's too expensive, here's the risk.
Right. Right. Or maybe we shouldn't be in business if the risk is too expensive, or if the solutions are too expensive. Right.
Yeah, and I you said something else that's I kind of wrote down, is the fact that we can doesn't mean we should.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
so,
think that's probably really true in this particular case with artificial intelligence. Right.
yeah. And so making responsible use of it, the fact that we can doesn't mean we should.
Right.
In this space is, I think, really important. What is responsible use of it in a way that basically, echoes our value of safety first always.
Right.
And so,
Deb, if you could implement just one AI solution in your security stack, what would it be?
So in my protective stack, my defensive stack,
I don't know. Take one AI solution.
I would have to go back to what I said originally, which is enabling my SOC, right? Finding, I don't know how my peers feel about this, but finding really skilled SOC analysts is like finding needles in a haystack. And if I can leverage AI as a force multiplier for them, that's going to be my priority.
Okay.
Yeah, I could see utilizing your own people to write, AI models with your own data and keeping them. It's got to be fantastic for the organization, because then you could just customize everything to what you need.
You can customize it, but you're also creating additional challenge for people that have, in some respects, pretty boring jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, doing log reviews all day, not fun.
Yeah.
So the more you can give them challenges,
Yeah.
it keeps them engaged.
Yeah. Take 1,000 alerts down to 5 helps.
Down to 5, right?
Sometimes please, Bonnie. No, please.
No, I
please.
think that's a big requirement too for any of the vendors that are out there. Constant alerts create numbness.
Yes,
and so
they do.
Alert me when it's the most important thing I need to know, not
They do.
just
Then on the
every
flip side,
single thing.
Removing too many runs the risk of removing the one that you needed.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So what's the right amount? Well, the right amount is the one I need.
Right.
That's
and it's
exactly
based on knowing the environment that you're operating in. Right. So when you asked earlier, Alex, do I think SOC analysts are going to go away? No, because they are uniquely positioned right now to know the environment they operate in and what normal looks like and what normal does not look like.
Yeah.
And that's going to take, not that AI can't learn that, but it's not going to do it overnight.
Okay. I might have one question, but Bonnie, would you like to start?
No, go ahead, Alex.
Okay. This is my last question. What's one piece of advice you wish more CISOs would follow when dealing with AI?
Goodness.
Sorry for the tough question.
Yeah, nice one, Alex.
Yeah.
Politically correct here.
Piece of advice. I would say just don't believe the hype.
Okay.
Validate, right?
Yeah.
Validate what you're hearing.
Yeah.
Do your homework, right? Don't get lazy. Being a CISO is a lot of work. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of research.
I've been there. I know.
Yeah, right?
And still, somehow I am again.
Right. You still have to get your hands dirty. So, some version of trust but verify. I wouldn't start with trust in AI.
Yeah.
I would start with the verify. Verify everything you're hearing and everything you're seeing.
This is what am I doing in my job. In fact, okay. We go to. I mean, when I mean we, it's my teams. We are going to meetings. We are listening. So, and then I'm checking in order to trust them. And in the same way, even for the frameworks or even for the standards that I'm reading, I'm trying to check everything if it's correct, that information, because even the standard sometimes maybe it's allowed for some companies, but not for all applies. That's another problem over there. You have to understand, as a logical person, you have to understand what the environment is there. Is a critical one, okay, what we should do, how we can protect, how we can prevent any risk over there, and so on.
Yep, absolutely.
So, Bonnie, did you have any questions? I know we're getting near. We only have 5
Yeah,
minutes.
I think just one more thing, and that is, what I'm hearing from you though, Debbie, is you said verify but trust, or trust but verify, but what I didn't hear is ignore, but don't ignore it.
No, you can't
Because
ignore.
it's here. I mean, this thing,
It's here.
I said,
Right.
that ship sailed. You better figure out how you you get on board with it, or at least somehow or other steer it for your organization.
Yeah.
Because
Ignore it at your
because
own
ignoring
peril.
it is at your own peril. Yeah, exactly. So thank you for that. Okay.
Great.
And so that, I think, is it. That was kind of my last statement on this, but I thank you, your wisdom on this, and you're living the experience. You and Alex certainly are living that experience right now, and so I appreciate your wisdom and how you're bringing it to your workforce, not just your cybersecurity workforce, but the whole of the workforce of Delta. I think that's the bigger piece of it. It's not just the people that you work with; it's all of the people that work with those people too.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Debbie, thank you so much for your time. Very kind of you to come on. Thank you.
Aaron, thank you. Alex, Bonnie, pleasure to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Likewise, Debbie. Thank you very much.